Welcome to the Open Mic Podcast Show with Mike Midgley.
So hey, welcome to the Open Mic Podcast. And in today's episode, we're really going to be discussing the exciting world of automated marketing. And with so many sort of, different options out there, unproven strategies, there's a vast range of software and support services out there. Personally, I believe this, but many also, the people I speak to, think that digital and automated marketing is very much like the Wild West. And it certainly can be confusing for business owners, either knowing where to start or who to trust. And if you're in that situation, then this podcast is really going to help you get to the bottom of that. And I'm really excited to be joined on the show to help us navigate through this sort of minefield and topic by Kenda Macdonald from Automation Ninjas. Welcome, Kenda. How are you?
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm very, very excited to be here.
Absolute pleasure. You've had a bit of a trip this morning, I understand.
Yeah, well, I came out last night because it was that important. I'm super excited about it. I've been dreaming about how we're going to get this value across in this podcast, and I'm super excited about it.
That's fantastic. And a big trip, big commitments, and we do appreciate your time, Kenda. So, thank you very much indeed for coming down. I do appreciate it. So, we certainly have a great topic to cover with, for the listeners to really get clear on, the sort of the key considerations around automated marketing, as well as a load of other aspects that I don't think people understand. That it's not just automated marketing, Kenda, is it? There's a lot of things we're going to talk around the buyer psychology and things like that. And I would never do you the justice that you could do, but I just want to set the listeners and the viewers' expectations about Kenda's pedigree. Without building it up too much, it is pretty awesome. Not only is a forensic psychology expert, buyer expert, soon to be published author as well as the CEO of Automation Ninjas. So I think I've given you a bit of a platform there to sort of follow on. So please just tell the audience and the listeners a little bit about you, and I suppose ultimately why they should listen to us as the experts in automated marketing and buyer psychology.
So I am, the CEO of Automation Ninjas. I got started in this business because of my background in forensic psychology. I am from South Africa, hence the slightly dodgy accent. Sorry about that. So effectively, it all really started when I was really young. Unfortunately, one of my friends was murdered when I was in primary school, which was a little bit of a shocking situation. And I decided at that point, at the ripe old age of 9, that I was going to change the world, as you tend to do. And I thought I would do this because of the scenario that we were in by going into some form of law enforcement role. Yeah. And so I kind of bounced backwards and forwards between this throughout my kind of young years, and eventually when I got into the point of going to university, I decided that the best way to fix some of the problems that South Africa had was to get into forensics. And that's what I was going to do. And I very quickly was headhunted by the British Police Force in the UK, which is how I ended up coming to the UK because of some of the, I worked in Cape Town morgue for a while, so I'd shown that I could handle the role.
That's serious pressure. Yeah, and, exactly. Not for everybody, that for sure.
No, especially since Cape Town has like 40 murders a day approximately, so the morgue it's a busy place to be in. It's like working in some of the morgues in America.
40 murders a day?
Yeah, on average. So
well, I don't know how that works against crime stats like New York or other major cities like London or something, but it sounds excessive.
London, it was actually funny because when I moved to the UK, I shouldn't have laughed at this, but I did. I got a pamphlet through, I was living in Hackney, and I got a pamphlet through saying, it's shocking, we've had 8 murders in Hackney this year. And it was the end of the year, and I was like, what? That's amazing.
Yeah, that's a low number.
So yeah, I mean, like moving to the UK has been a big cultural change, but I mean, I was determined to get into forensics, and it was really interesting because while I was studying, I realized that there is not a hell of a lot you can do to change the world if you're picking up the pieces.
Right.
So if you're in the back end of all of that, it's all happened already. Unfortunate, awful situations have happened, and all you can do is make sure that justice is served, and very often it's not justice, and it's not a great situation to be in. And so I kind of was paying my way through uni. I ended up working for somebody in a kind of personal assistant role, and on my first day of the job he said to me, I'm going to sit you down, you need to understand why our clients are so antsy about this. we work with this software called Infusionsoft, and it's all about marketing automation. And I need you to understand that it's difficult. So what I want you to do, and I'd never heard of automated marketing before, I'd never ever touched anything in the marketing realm. I was in law enforcement, right? And he said to me, I want you to go in and I want you to build a campaign that does this, this, and this. Off you go. And I was like, oh, okay. So I sat down and I was like, right, make a cup of tea, nice little Earl Grey, have it on the side, let's get ready, let's go. And I just threw myself into the help center for Infusionsoft. This was my first kind of, and I was like, let's make it happen. They had some great videos, and so I went along and I logged in and I was like, this is a system. There's stuff everywhere. And
so you saw the potential straight away.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, okay, this is kind of cool. And then I kind of started getting in. This was before the campaign builder was around.
Yeah.
So I was tweaking and fiddling with the legacy system, and I built this campaign. And my boss came back that evening, and I think he basically nearly fell off his chair because he expected me to fail. He set me up for failure because he wanted me to have the experience of understanding
what the customers would experience, and then you can tap into that when you speak to them or whatever.
Except that never happened. Like, since then, I was like, wow, this really fits with the logical part of my brain, and I can build the experiences out, build the flowcharts out, and I basically started running with Infusionsoft, and I wasn't a PA from that point. And so I became an Infusionsoft certified partner, and at the same time I was still studying forensics and still going through uni, and I started to see that there was this big problem forming. Like, in marketing automation, nobody plans for behavior. And I was like, whoa, okay, this is a bit weird. And then through a series of unfortunate incidents, my boss shut his business down, and I was left in a bit of a pooey situation. I had a team that I'd built up. We were doing really well. We did really good work, but we'd been really constrained in what we could do and what we could talk to the customers about. I couldn't really point out that there were behavioral problems in what they were doing because it would show my boss up. So I was like, okay, actually, do you know what? We're really good at what we do. Let's do this. And so Automation Ninjas was born. And from that point in time, I read a great book by Adam Ferrier called The Advertising Effect. And hilariously, through a bizarre coincidence, Adam Ferrier's background is in forensics.
Wow.
And he brings that into advertising.
So you've connected with that straight away.
I was like, whoa, actually, I've got something really big I can offer to the world, because what he does is he brings it into the advertising, but he doesn't do anything after the fact. So after the point of opt-in, after the point of, kind of seeing that first, experience with that advert or that brand, nobody does anything for it. And I thought, you know what, I could really bring marketing automation and biopsychology together, and this might be the way that I change the world. Because if I can work with small businesses and I can push them really hard to be good to their customers, I can pay it forward. And we sunk our kind of hopes and dreams into all of that, and now we have this amazing team of like-minded disruptors, and that's exactly what we do. We push small businesses really hard to achieve the success that I think they deserve, because they run economies.
Absolutely.
And we bring the marketing automation and the biopsychology together, and it's awesome.
That's a great intro, and thank you very much, Kenda. I've learned, I've known you a while when we first met back in Manchester a couple or so years ago, but I didn't know half of that, so that's really interesting. So thank you. And I think what I'm intrigued about, with the small business economy and how it powers, 95+% of the market is small business. Over 5.3 million small businesses in the UK, 2.89 million or something registered with the HMRC.
It's huge.
It's a massive market, and we all look after the big Coca-Colas, the Googles and Facebooks, but there's the people at the coalface that's doing the job, and often I find that they don't always have the right skills, and they need that trusted service. But I think what I'm interested more, and I'm going to explore this, and hopefully if you don't mind, I'm going to dig in a little bit through the podcast, is this biopsychology as well, because I think for the listeners here, you may be coming across gurus online, people who claim to be this, people to be claimed to be that. Like Kenda, we both work in the Infusionsoft, but we also work in the HubSpot inbound agency sort of market, and we bring strategy as our unique position because we think strategy is like the foundations of a building. With the rest of the build, the walls and the roof, and we adopt a business approach, not a marketing approach, and then we get the business model right, the marketing model fields on and go from there. So I see the niche, I see the connection, and I think, stay on, guys. If you're listening to this in the car, you're watching it on YouTube, on the blog, whatever it would be, We're going to have a great ride. So buckle your seatbelt, strap yourself in, and let's get into automated marketing linked to biopsychology. So what we've got, Kenda, and I think the starting point, our audience, we've got a whole host of audiences from people who are just getting started all the way through to some of the more experienced people. But just for the layman's terms, Kenda, when we use the terminology automated marketing and biopsychology to a degree, can you just give us an overview of what you mean by that, so the listeners are on the same page as we go through this podcast?
Sure. I think the biopsychology bit is kind of the easy one to explain in this one, because biopsychology is everything about why humans do what they do, and how we make decisions and how we make purchase decisions. It's important to understand that, so that you can put your products, your offerings, your adverts, your marketing, all of those things together in alignment, so that you're making it as easy as possible for the buyer to make a decision. Whether it's yes or no, you just need to get them to make the decision. So the biopsychology bit's kind of easy. The difficult bit is when it comes to automated marketing. And so what I like to do is I actually like to separate the two out. So once we have a definition of marketing, and we think about marketing really clearly, marketing really in today's economy is very different than it was 5-10 years ago.
And just at this point, I'm sorry to cut across your Kenda there, but just for the listeners, if you're sat there in a traditional model, which let's just call it outbound at the moment, where you're using disruptive techniques, whether that's telephone calling or press advertising or TV advertising, I'm not saying they're not effective, but they're certainly not as effective as what they used to be. And the buyer cycle has certainly changed, sorry, apologies. The buyer cycle has certainly changed, and the way people buy has changed, hasn't it, Kenda? So I think sit tight. If you're sat in that moment, this is going to be a pivotal moment that you can really sort of dig in and understand. So, Kenda, please continue.
So if we start to think about how that marketing has changed and disrupted, and everybody keeps saying it's changed, and we'll get a little bit into this in a little bit. But marketing, the real definition that we all need to embrace for marketing now, is that marketing is everything that has to do with getting and then keeping the customer. And we're kind of okay with understanding marketing as getting the customer, but what we're not very good at doing, even in today's new market, is understanding that it's also to do with keeping the customer.
Retention, isn't it?
It's all about that retention. That's your customer lifetime value. Keeping that customer for as long as you can is where your profits are really going to come from. And so when you start to think of marketing as being about getting and keeping the customer, all these silos in a business between advertising, marketing, content, sales start to disappear, and everybody starts to work cohesively as a whole towards the customer and the customer's experience. So that's how I like to define marketing itself, is about getting and keeping the customer. And then the automated bit is just streamlining that process. It's making it as efficient and as effective as possible. It's cutting out human error, but it's also about understanding exactly what the consumer wants, and this is where the buyer bit comes in again, and understanding how they want to interact with you as a business, so that you're streamlining their customer experience, because it's about getting and keeping the customer.
Absolutely.
And so that's how I like to define marketing automation.
It's a great example. And I think that when you look at this as a whole, a lot of people, they're either, especially in the small business, and this is what I find, it doesn't matter if they're in the trades, the professional services, sports, it doesn't really matter. They're good at what they do, or they're usually good at what they do, and then they just talk and talk and talk about what they do, as opposed to looking at it from the customer side. I know you'll probably cover on that at a later point. But again, so if you're listening out there, and if you want to shoot us a message, you can do that on our preferred Twitter channel or social media channel, which is Twitter. Just use the hashtag #TheOpenMic. And if you're unsure about whether you should be talking about your products, or you should be talking about what the customer is really thinking, or just if you're confused about marketing automation, or what marketing is and where marketing starts and sales stops, or vice versa, shoot us a message using the hashtag #TheOpenMic, and we'll get those questions answered, or we'll get you connected with Kenda, and I'm sure you'll be able to happy to sort of give some advice there. So I think just on that point with the automated marketing, one thing I'd really like you to cover is why you say all SMEs should have marketing automation or automated marketing and in this sort of biopsychology on their radar. Why is that so important?
Number one, it's what the customer expects. Okay, so if you take away all of the kind of awesome marketing jazz that gets put out there by the marketing automation platforms, where they're telling you you're going to save time, you're going to save money, you're going to do this, that's all great and fine, and that is a very good reason to go down that route, but it's actually what the customer wants. The customer wants a streamlined experience. They don't give a damn about your silos within your business. They don't care about any of your marketing team and your sales team. All they want is a very streamlined, clear and efficient process, and that is what marketing automation gives you. So it's all about what the consumer wants and their experience thereof, and all of the things that are good for your business, like the saving the time, the saving money and making it efficient, come along afterwards.
Yeah, brilliant. That's really appreciative. So I think now we've got a handle of the marketing automated marketing by psychology, and we've touched on a little bit of systems. I think it's a great sort of way to move into that. If you're confused about which is the best system to use, it does, I suppose, depend on where your business is at, what size your business is, whether you can DIY this, whether you need to outsource different professionals, people like Kenda who can support you in that, and if you just look at Automation Ninjas online, you'll search that, you'll pick up those types of support services. But from your perspective, you're experienced in the marketplace, there's a so wide option of systems to choose from. Where would you ask people to start, and what's your preferred system to deliver on this?
So first and foremost, my preferred system in the current marketplace in terms of what it is currently capable of doing is Infusionsoft.
Yeah.
That is not to say that Infusionsoft is right for you.
Yeah.
So great way of making that distinction in the question there.
Yeah.
My preferred system is Infusionsoft, but that doesn't mean it's my preferred system for you.
Correct.
Okay, it's all about what your needs and wants are, what your requirements are as a business. So my point of starting is, don't go searching marketing automation systems. Just don't do that. Leave Google alone for the time being.
Yeah.
Don't even go ask a consultant about it. Sit down and write down for yourself, away from everyone else that can bias you about this. Just sit down and write down exactly what you need. What does your consumer want? What do you need as a business? Where are the big problems that you're currently facing and that are affecting with the way that you're interacting with your customers?
Yeah.
How does that all fit together? And when you have a list of things, of problems and issues and needs and requirements, at that point, start the Googling.
Yeah, and then you can match a system to the requirement.
Exactly.
And it's a little bit like what we do as well, Kenda, and it doesn't matter whether the small, medium or in enterprise level business. Jumping straight into a system is wrong. Whiteboards for us. And we push them out on the board. We quote Alistair, and he calls it a straw man, and that we get that out. Then we'll put it onto a process mapping or a funnel mapping system or a workflow system.
Yeah.
And then only when we've got it understood and we've got all the elbows, then we can sort of say, hey, go on and build that out from that side.
I would love to show you my whiteboard. It's 8 meters by 1.2 meters.
Wow.
Because it's the whole length of my office so that I can map out customer experiences. We've got that space to be creative, which is nice. But it's so important to do that exercise before you choose the system. If we want to kind of bring it back into a law enforcement role, it's like arresting the criminal before you've looked at any of the evidence. That gets you into a lot of trouble, and it gets the wrong people behind bars and makes very unhappy sausages all round. So make sure that you kind of sit down, work out what all of the problems and issues are first, what your requirements are, and it's very important as well in that process to not limit yourselves to where you currently are as a business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because your system that you choose has to grow with you.
That's a great point, because it's not just where you're at today, it's about what does that next 3, 6, 12 months immediately, and then it might be the next 3 years or whatever it would be. And have you got?
It has to have the space to grow with you.
It's no different to buying a house. You're buying a house as a young couple. You may have a family. You want that extra space. You don't want to be moving again, and it's just things like that. And getting that right piece of consultancy. And one of the things that we always used to come across with is our policy here at the Success Hub has always been, whilst we will always give free information, we'll always give initial guidance, but if it actually comes to speccing stuff out, that's a chargeable service. And what we would always say, and customers will say, hey, well, you're charging me to show me what you're going to do to charge me again. And I said, yeah, but it's understanding what you need, and then we might be able to save you X hundred or thousand or £10,000 by stopping you going down down a route by getting it done. So the investment that you've got into the overview or the initial play is there. So I'm not an advocate for trying to say, hey guys, go out and hire a consultant at whatever price, or go and hire Kenda and the team at Automation Ninjas. But what I'm saying is the money that you will invest in any pre-strategy with an expert will save you tenfold than getting it wrong. So every 1,000 you invest, you'll save 10 grand in errors and time. And
it's not just that, it's the sleepless nights.
Correct.
It's the sleepless nights, it's the team that hates you, it's the ugly crying in the shower, it's all of the things that go along with making a bad decision. And the kind of big thing is that you need to make sure that you pay somebody to take you through the process so that you can also see what is possible.
Agreed.
Because it's not just about, I often see people do this when they're building campaigns in Infusionsoft. They have a certain idea of the limitations of the system. And because they have an idea of the limitations of the system, they build something that fits in that box.
And they're underselling themselves to a degree.
Exactly. So there are so many things that you can do. And if you go and you have that plan put together, even if that person, you don't end up working with that person, so if they come in and have you do that process for them, they don't end up working with you because it's not a right fit, you have the information to take to somebody else who is a good fit, and it means you actually know what's going on.
Absolutely. I mean, we call them a game plan. I know it's an overused term especially in American sports, but it will give you a game plan document, you take it away, give it to somebody else and invest it there if you want to do that. Well, that's a great tip, and thanks for the guidance there. I think the part that I'm really excited about, and I said it's not that the previous 2 or 3 points have not been salient, because they've been really valuable, but I work with that on a daily basis. What's really exciting to me is this biopsychology, this forensic psychology. So I'm pulling a bit of rank here as the podcast host, and I'm dominating this question part here, and I'd really love to know a little bit more. Tell me, Kenda, the importance of understanding biopsychology and why it's important to connect it to automated marketing.
So here's the first part. If you don't have attention, and I'm not talking about attention as the sort of like how many people are looking at your Facebook page and that kind of stuff. Not that kind of attention. But if somebody is looking at Google or looking at something and you can't get through to the part of their brain that actually deals with attention, you are wasting all of your money and all of your time. So here's the deal. We pay attention in 2 very different ways. There's a fantastic Nobel Prize winner in economics, funnily enough, as a psychologist, called Daniel Kahneman, who kind of developed this system of paying attention called System 1 and System 2.
You alright?
Yeah. And basically these 2 systems are the ways of how we pay attention. We don't pay attention in the way that everybody thinks we do, like a camera picking up all the details around us. That is 100% not how we do it. Instead, there are certain things that we do on autopilot and certain things we cognitively pay attention to.
Interesting.
Okay, so the autopilot, and Daniel Kahneman came up with the most exciting names for these systems, System 1 and System 2.
It really pushed the boat.
He did. He really put a lot of thought into that. And so basically System 1 is your fast and automatic system, and System 2 is your like intensely cognitive system. It's kind of the system that we think of as the brain.
Right, got it.
However, here's the interesting bit. System 1 is what is on most of the day.
Right.
The vast majority of your day, you're coasting along in System 1 on autopilot.
So is that like one of those equivalent where people say just people shut out noise? And is there an element to that? Or is that not? Or have I missed something?
No, okay. You're very close. And System 2 is kind of the bit where we make effective decisions and we actually apply our brains. So the best way to kind of look at this is that System 2, so our very effective system that pays attention to a lot of stuff, can only take in around 40 bits of information per second.
Wow.
Okay, so that's really not a lot of information.
So what would be give me 40 bits of information, 40 bits per second. What does that equate to? So
it equates to reading a sentence.
Right. So
each bit is like not just the thing. It would be looking at the color of the paper, looking at the words on the paper.
That's it.
And there are lots of little bits, and then you've got to cognitively run through that as well. So the brain is like working at a super high level just to read something. And it can only take in 40 bits per second. But there's all the other stuff that you've got to do. Like you've got to sit in your chair, you've got to stay upright, you've got to do all of this. And that is all what System 1 is controlling. And System 1 takes in, and there are different opinions on this, but between 10 140 million bits a second.
Wow.
Okay, so system 1 is what gets you out of the house in the morning. Because if you relied on system 2 to get you out of the house, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen.
There's not enough processing power.
No. And this is kind of, the system 1 is what we are learning as we're kids, do things like walk and that kind of stuff. You know, like when you watch a baby, it is so effortful just to crawl across the carpet. It can't do anything else. It's not going to tell you algebra at this point in time. It's going to learn how to get the crawling into system 1 first before it can do anything else. So the kind of example I always give is when you're learning how to drive. Remember that moment, you get in the car the first time, you're going to drive with your driving instructor, and you're terrified, and you're sitting there, and you're like, okay, I'm going to turn the engine on, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this. And it's like, it's terrifying, and you think, I'm never going to do this. Now, suddenly you end up at work, and you're like, how did I
even get here?
I don't even remember how I got here. I don't remember what I did. And it's just like this whole massive thing that's going on in the background because you have learned the habit.
of doing it.
And so now you've taken that driving, which was such an effortful skill, and it's being transferred into habit. So the difference is that system 1 takes a long time to form a habit. It takes ages to form this habit of being able to do something. But once it's done, it's like set in stone.
I mean, I don't recall the author. I don't even know where the quote come from, and it may even be an urban myth. I don't know. But I was always told about the 21 steps to habit, that if you keep doing it for something for 21 days, repetitive, it becomes sort of a natural, or it becomes the norm, if that makes sense. So, I suppose that's the system 1.
There's some truth in there, and some myth in there, definitely. It's a lot longer than 21 days, actually. Yeah. It's around 60 to 90 days.
Wow.
And you've got to do it in really effortfully as well. Yeah. But system 1 does learn. That's the important thing. It takes a long time, but it does learn. The difficulty is once something becomes a habit, it's really hard to unlearn it. This is like riding a bicycle. You cannot ride a bicycle for 10 years, but you get back on it and pretty soon you remember everything because the information is stored in system 1.
So help us understand with this sort of biopsychology. If we're looking at automated marketing and we're looking at this biopsychology, how do we, we're going to talk about connecting them later on in the podcast, but let's focus that biopsychology and that system 1 and system 2 about what the customers are actually thinking when they see your messages, whether that's driving past a billboard, they hear a commercial on the radio, or anything like that. So we'll get stuck into that and see how we go with that and see what tips we've got. So how are we connecting that buyer's message from seeing an advert on the TV, listening to it on the radio, a direct mail piece comes through your letterbox, an email drops in your inbox, whether it's spam or not, we'll get into that in a different letter. But how is that biopsychology connecting and working with that system 1 and system 2?
So here's where system 1 and system 2 become really powerful. We tend to it's not really used in marketing a lot, and I'm working very hard to change that at the moment. So system 2 kind of has to tell system 1 to keep an eye out for something. Okay. Right? So I like to equate the relationship to the Minions movie. If anyone's ever seen the Minions, they'll know what I'm talking about.
Despicable Me. You got it?
Yeah, okay, so Gru is kind of like the overlord. He's the dude that tells everybody what to do. That is system 2. Right. That's the really intensive kind of a part of our brain. Whereas all the little minions that are running around causing chaos are system 1. Okay, so system 2 has to very carefully tell system 1 what it's looking for, and then system 1 goes out and does it. So let's say your buyer or your prospect has a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is system 2 going, there's an issue here and I need a solution to this. I'm cognitively thinking about this as a problem. So system 1 over here, I have this issue. I'm having a really hard time with my marketing automation and I need to solve it. Yeah. Let's stick with that example. And so it says this to system 1 and then we go off because it's a habit and we go to Google. And we type this in and the minions just get that loose on the page, right? And what they've got is they've got a little bit of information from system 2 as to what system 2 is looking for. Yeah. And they're now going to hold up all the things that match. Okay, and they're going to go, this bit matches over here, this bit matches here, because with that tiny 40 bits of information per second, we can't actually pay attention to the whole page of results. It's not possible. So we're scanning it, and system 1 is passing us up the stuff that's important to pay attention to. It doesn't pay attention to it, it passes it to system 2. Yeah. What happens if your messaging is off? Yeah. Your information is incorrect, And what happens with advertising? Oh my God, Google Ads.
Yeah, and it can even be if you're targeting the wrong people as well, isn't it? Because they're not looking at all.
Exactly. So the criteria doesn't match with what System 2 has told System 1 to look for, and the information literally gets put in the junk and no attention gets paid to your message. So you've lost before you've even started.
Indeed.
Here's the very interesting thing. System 1 learns very slowly. What have we learned from clicking on adverts on Google? Someone wants to sell us something. Someone wants to sell us something. I could get a virus on my computer. All these things could happen. They're all negative things. And it took us a while to learn that.
Yeah.
But over the last sort of 10 years of the internet, we've learned some things.
Yeah, it's developed.
So it's not a coincidence that Google Ads is not as effective as it used to be. It's just the fact that System 1 has learned that ads might not be the best result because System 2 went, I need this information. System 1 went, here, I've got it for you, and felt really proud of itself, passed it up to System 2. System 2 looked at it and went, well, this is nonsense, and gets really angry because it's just wasted resources on looking at something that isn't relevant.
Absolutely.
And
so
System
it's about
1
content and relevancy here.
Yeah.
Which is,
System 1 went, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah.
And it took a few times, but eventually it filters these results out so that we can cognitively pay attention to the important things. So that's how attention is really, really important, and we've got to make sure that we're relevant in what we're saying.
So linking that to buyer's journey, I know we've sort of given a very good overview, and that's a really good detail there, Kenda. And you just don't sometimes think like that as a human. It's not until you actually get into it and get deeper into it. That's why I was so excited about this particular section. So I'm sort of bossing this. I want to know more type of thing. But obviously we talk a lot about the buyer's journey. We talk about how we get the message through to the credit card or the cash in the till, whichever format it is. And just sort of touch on that briefly for us. Your view on the buyer's journey and how psychology plays a part in it.
So really interestingly, when we make cognitive decisions and when we're deciding between certain things, there's actually a there's a set of processes we have to go through. First of all, it really depends on where you are in your hierarchy of needs. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs depends what you're looking for. But once you've got all of your base needs sorted, there is actually an awareness journey that you go through. And humans follow a very specific set of things in order to make a decision. And this has kind of been evolved and adapted and changed and dumbed down so much into what is very often called the awareness journey. So when someone becomes problem aware, solution aware, blah, blah, blah. But actually it does hark back to actual psychological principles. And effectively there are steps that we all have to go through before we are ready to purchase something. When you understand what all of those steps are, you can put a system together to make sure that you are showing up with the relevant information. And addressing
it at that point.
And addressing those things. You then build a really good positive association. System 1 marks you as good, and basically you're
trustworthy as well.
Trustworthy, you're running through the process, and when the person comes to buy, they're like, this person's giving me information, they've showed up at all of the points, and they're sending me relevant things to where I am in my journey.
And they're helping me make a decision.
Exactly, now I'm ready.
Yeah, and there's a great saying here, and again, I don't have the source of where I picked this up. I'll have picked it up on a webinar or from somebody promoting this, but it is so true. And I always think the best companies who are making what I say, not just the most sales, because it's not just about sales, it's about customer satisfaction, but ultimately as a business we have to drive revenue, and as long as you're providing great value and delivering quality, then profit's not a dirty word. I'm a big believer in. But I think ultimately it's all about helping the customer to buy, not trying to sell them something. And for me, if you're looking at your business today and you say, you look at your sales team, whether they're a telesales team, they're a field-based team, you've got account managers who are more servicing or targeted for increased growth in an account, and they're push, sell, then either your refund rate's going to go up, your chargeback rate, your complaint rate, and it's just bad practice. And while you get that instant gratification of the sales line of but by the time you've refunded, bad reputation, especially with the social reviews these days, it's not, but it's so easy for somebody to say bad experience on a review site, where it's not that easy to get a good quality 5-star review or from there. So think about it. Are you helping your customers to buy, or are you trying to sell them something? And that could be something where I know automated marketing can help and stage that in, and we'll talk about nurturing and things like that as well. So I'm a big believer of that. So look at your business today, guys. Again, if you want to open a debate with us, leave a comment on the blog or on YouTube, or shoot us a message on Twitter using the hashtag #TheOpenMic, and we'll get those questions. And I've got 2 or 3 examples that I can share with you, including blogs and such. Kenda, I'm sure you've got resources as well. We can just maybe ping out for the audience as well. So that buyer's journey is critical,
it's
isn't it?
vital.
Absolutely.
It's got to do several things. It's got to build the rule sets for system 1 and 2 so that people actually pay attention to your email when it comes into the inbox. But it's also got to take people and transition them along the awareness journey. And there are various different models and cycles that you can use. We use lifecycle marketing, and we have adapted it a little bit. That was originally created by Infusionsoft, and before that it was really the domain of the e-commerce providers.
Yes.
And it's all about taking people along that awareness journey. We've adapted it for engagement. So
that's important.
Which is super important to make sure that you're always engaging with people and keeping in touch with people, because we've put that behavioral slant on it. And whatever system you end up using, you need to make sure that you're engaging on a psychological level. Now, you touched on this a little bit earlier about making sure that you're talking about your consumer. This system 1, system 2 is why content marketing is so phenomenal.
It is.
Because it is talking about the consumer and the problem they are having, and it is providing the results that system 1 is flagging up. And so you're kind of creating a positive rule set. You're making sure you're covering all the things along the awareness journey, and you're focusing on customer lifetime value. And we do that with lifecycle marketing, and then automate it.
Absolutely. And we'll get to that in a moment or two, because I'm really interested for the audience to listen more about lifecycle marketing. But just on that point, as we talk and we sort of segue into the how to integrate that buyer psychology with automated marketing. Guys, if you sat out there today thinking about what my message should be or whatever else, it's all about the customer. It's all about the customer. What's their problems or what's their aspirations? And I know you'll drill it down a lot more. I've got a resource here when I was doing my research about this, just so I could try and at least have a sensible conversation with you about, people buy for whether it's, fear, gain or logic. You could drill that down here to greed, fear, altruism, envy, pride, shame, whatever it would be. But really, if you take it down to fear, gain or logic, they're either trying to solve a problem or gain an advantage or an aspiration to a desired known effect. And, they don't care. People don't buy your product. They buy the solution that it gives.
Exactly.
So if you're sat there and, I don't know, you're a garage mechanic. I started out, 30 odd years ago as a garage mechanic, and people aren't buying a car service, they're buying peace of mind to keep the warranty. People aren't buying breakdown cover, they're buying the peace of mind that if they do break down, they've got somebody to come out and get them off the motorway when they've got 2 kids in the back of the car or something like that. It's that peace of mind. So they're buying the solution or they're buying the end result. And I see, and it's as I'm sure you do the same, Kenda, you look at billboards, you look at advertisements, you look at some of you, maybe your new customers, when they come to you and you say, hey, turn your pockets out, let me look at what you're currently doing. And it's we have been in business so many years. We have been doing this. We do this. We do that. We call it the we diarrhea. And it's and then it's just like we. How many we's come to get into the first 4 sentences? Whether you go to networking events, like our team here, they do a lot of BNI, and you're either for BNI or against BNI. But our team go to BNI and other networking events, and they stand up and do the 60 seconds. We do this. We've been in business this long. We do this. It's like, do you know what? I generally don't care.
Do you know what? There's a hack for that. And here's the reason that doesn't work. Very specifically, if you're going to focus it back to psychology. Right? In order for us to understand something, we have to remember that we are absolutely not evolved to buy things. That is not what the brain was originally created for. The brain was originally created to survive, and it will do things to further its survival. Okay? So what we are effectively doing is we are hacking the brain when it comes to making purchase decisions and making any kind of decision. And you cannot do, they can't actually put themselves in that position in order to make a decision and understand you if you're talking about yourself.
Absolutely.
You have to be able to show it to them, and there are specific neurons in our brain called mirror neurons that are responsible for empathy, and that is why you have to talk about them, because that is what gets activated.
That's what they connect with.
Exactly. So you've got to talk about them.
Absolutely. And just at that point, as I mentioned in the intro, Kenda's soon to be a published author, so a big congratulations on that. And if you're interested in learning more about this, Kenda's book's going to be called Hack the Buyer Brain. And if you want to go to automationninjas.com /golden ticket, You can leave your details on there. It's fully GDPR compliant. Kenda's not going to spam you to death and that, but she will send you, I believe, a free copy of the book once it's launched.
Yeah.
So just to confirm, that's automationninjas.com/golden ticket, as in Willy Wonka's golden ticket. And roughly when is that going to be published, Kenda? Have we got a published date or an estimated date on that as yet?
I think we're about 4 or 5 months out.
Yeah, so it's the end of 2018. So at the time of recording, we're recording this July 18. So it might be looking at the end of 2018, early 2019. But look, Kenda spent a lifetime of studying education and degrees in forensic science and psychology. I apologise, not forensic science, psychology. So as a free book here, knowledge is the power of the world. We've got a policy here. If we don't know something or we come against a hurdle, we go and look at the people who know what they're doing, and then we see what they've published. We go and get the book, and then we read it, and then we build up. And I'm studying a lot of blockchain at the moment, not necessarily cryptocurrency, but the methods of blockchain. So Satoshi Nakamoto and the blockchain revolution. I'm obviously into that, not because I'm another cryptocurrency investor, because I'm not. I'm just interested to how the blockchain ledger is going to transform and become Internet 2.0. Yeah. That's what I'm looking at, and how we can build systems on the blockchain and things like that. So we go and find the experts in the field, read about it, follow the podcast, follow the leads, evolve. So if you want to learn more about forensic psychology and getting this linked into your marketing, Hack the Brain, Hack the Buyer Brain by Kenda Macdonald, automationninjas.com/golden ticket. Go leave your details and go get a copy and get that picked up. So a great segue into integrating buyer psychology and that life cycle marketing, Kenda. And maybe you can just give us a little bit more and explain what that is. I know you touched on it earlier, but break it down into the stages of life cycle marketing and how that can be applied to businesses.
So lifecycle marketing, as we use it, is a modular system of 4 component parts. So the original model by Infusionsoft was 3. We have adapted that for psychology, so it's 4 component parts. And the basis is taking people along this buyer journey. That's the whole backbone of it. It's about all of that awareness and transitioning them into going from a stranger to a really loyal an advocate basically. So the 4 component parts are attract, engage, sell, and wow. So the idea is that there are specific things that you need to do to attract that attention initially, and then kind of get them to opt in within the attract phase, just being very clear on who your consumer is, what they're interested in and what they're paying attention to at this point in time. That's all the attract. Then we move into engage, which is about taking that attention and transitioning it and going, we have some information for you. It's all about the problem you're currently experiencing. Here is how we can help you. It's very inbound based, very content based. Here's all of this cool stuff. Here's how you can solve your problem.
And this is a phase that a lot of people skip, isn't it? And they just say, you've made an inquiry, let me sell you something.
Yeah, they don't trust you yet. They don't trust you. They don't know you from a piece of cheese, or from Adam, as how many people say that phrase. And kind of, you need to build that positive association and the relationship with them, and you do that by helping them. And so engage is the phase that you help them in, you nurture and you educate. So that is the engage phase. It's all about providing the correct information and helping them with their problem.
And it sort of tees them up as well to get them further down the sales.
That is the clever part about all of this, is that if you are helping your consumer, all you are really doing, if you want to come at it from a hardcore sales perspective, is you're making them a better buyer. You're kind of you're going through all their objections. You're filling the void of questions that they have, and helping them become a better quality customer. We always say when you implement lifecycle marketing, you should expect better quality customers, longer customer lifetime value, higher return on investment from your marketing, and less churn. So there's all sorts of good things to come from it. So the engage phase is all about building that relationship, making them a better quality lead. Then you transition into sell, which is making the offer at the appropriate time.
Correct. Timing is everything.
Exactly. At the appropriate time, and then delivering what you kind of promised. And then we transition into wow, which is making sure you're giving them a stellar experience from the original purchase. When they're happy, upselling, cross-selling, all the good stuff that gets you that customer lifetime value, and then transitioning into let's talk testimonials, let's talk referrals. But because it's modular, at any point in this kind of journey, and if you're tracking your kind of behavior properly, you can kind of move into another phase. So if somebody then is a customer and they become interested in another one of your one of your projects, you can move them into the track phase. And the interesting thing about understanding your consumer is that what you'll notice is your consumer develops, grows, and changes as they interact with your business. If they are not transitioning, you're not doing a good job.
Absolutely.
So by the time they have purchased and consumed your product and they're happy, they're a very different person to what they came in initially, and their needs are different. And if you've got a good business model, you're going to have things that are going to fit their needs.
It's dynamic. It's got to be dynamic, hasn't it? There's too many businesses, and what I work on my sort of non-exec side that I do. I see businesses static, planted in the ground, servicing and fulfilling.
We do this thing and nothing else.
It's an obvious question I ask a lot of them, and that is something along the lines of, how many times have you had a customer who's bought a product or service that you sell or provide, and then you've turned around to say to them, well, we supply that product or service, and they go, oh, I didn't know, because they've not either been dynamic, they've not kept them aware, they've not educated them, they've took the sale and they just want to keep either reselling that product if it's a consumable transactional sale, or they just believe that there's no further opportunity. And it's such a narrow vision. So, transitioning them out of one product into another, keeping it dynamic, having a fluid business model is certainly the way to go. And I think there's some awesome benefits of life cycle marketing, of what it is and how it works. And I know obviously you've put a lot of development time into that and into the model. If you're interested in finding out more about that, Kenda's got some really good sort of packaged products, and I don't want to downtread that, because I know you put a lot of time and effort in. And what I mean by packaged, it's not like a cheap disposable off the shelf. It's high intensity. Again, if you look at automationninjas.com under the services section, there's quite a few packages on there that you'll drill down and you can see it, and the science behind that. So really, I was really impressed when I saw how you package them, because I'm such a big fan of productization.
Yes, it's important.
And it doesn't matter whether you're looking at fast food chains, whether it's Big Macs through to wraps, or you're looking at Apple computers, whether it's Mac or iPod or iPod Pro, or whatever it is. There's productization for specific markets, and then there's specific content at top, middle and bottom of funnel that's pushing that out there together. So that's great. And do you have a cheat sheet or something like that somebody could download for that, or could we link one to the podcast or the blog for that?
We can definitely do that. In fact, we've recently started doing an assessment in terms of assessing what your strategy is like. Assessing how you're performing. It's normally delivered, vocally, in terms of we'll ask you specific questions, but we can make our questions available. Yeah,
well, maybe if you get us a link for that, we'll stick that on there, and then and obviously you can take
me up for pre-assessment,
and we'll go from there. So. And I think that really leads into the sort of next point that I've got. And I think there's some value for you to sort of put some time in for the audience. The importance of staying in touch for the longer term. We touched on it a couple of times about that engage, and then, how to get and how to retain. And people sometimes just get the sale, don't they, then stop. And from there. So, when we look at that longer term, just sort of, again, define what you mean by that, and then how it can be used for the audience.
So if you look in terms of what e-commerce traditionally defines as a buyer life cycle, what you generally tend to find, and these are e-commerce stats, and don't quote me on the exact percent, but what they tend to find is that it costs around, I think it's between 60 and 70% more to get a new customer on board than it is to get an existing customer to purchase something. And the reason for that is pretty clear as day. You've already built a relationship with somebody, and because you've built that relationship, they trust you. And the important thing is, if you do your job correctly and you know where they are and how they're going to transition within their buyer journey, you know what the next problem is.
Absolutely.
So you can preempt it. And if you're kind of positioning yourself as an authority and everything, it is actually your duty to preempt that next purchase.
Yeah, because you're helping. It's an early warning sign for the customer as well. And I know this phrase has been used so many times, but people do buy from people they know, like, and trust.
Exactly.
And if they trust you already, you're on that prime position, and you're on that pedestal to. And I'm not saying you have a right to the business, but you've got a right to say, hey, I think there could be a banana skin coming up here for you, and you may want to take a look at this. Or we've seen some signs in your industry that seem to be adopting or playing out like this. Hey, this is how we've sort of fixed it for other people. Would you be interested in having a chat, and we can do the same for you? It's that help.
Exactly.
Sort of, conscientious, I'm caring for you, as opposed to saying, hey, I'm down on sales this month, will you buy something else? And they repel off that, don't they?
I mean, we do this all the time. Like, I think Amazon has, for the most part, become the go-to with everything that we tend to turn for. Why do we do that? It's convenient. We know that we trust them. If you're going to we don't like them, but we trust them. We know that we're getting a specific experience that we're comfortable with, so we go back time and time and time and time again, and we purchase things off of Amazon. When I was planning our wedding, I was buying things 4 or 5 times a week off of Amazon, even though they were more expensive, because I knew what the experience was going to be like. I understood that if something didn't turn up, I had a very good idea of my relationship and where I stood with Amazon. And that is why you need to plan for that and build for that within your own customer journey. It's where your profits are as well, because you don't have to spend huge amounts of money and effort getting that person on board again. They're already on board and they're ready for the next thing.
And it stops the leakage of those customers as well. There's just a quick reference here, and whether you're a fan of Michael Gerber and the E-Myth or not, it's entirely up to you. I'm not suggesting you should go and adopt that or you shouldn't. It's definitely worth a check out, especially for the system and processing. There's a great story in the E-Myth about a guy who goes to his barbershop. And he goes there and he gets a specific experience, which was excellent. He got greeted, he got offered a drink, he sat down, the barber told him he had to wash his hair, and then it cuts better, and he does that. So he was so impressed with it. It was the first time he'd been, he went back a second time. But the second time, he didn't get greeted the same, he wasn't offered a drink at all, he didn't wash his hair, and he cut it. And he thought, oh, is this guy just on a bad day? But he felt that experience change. So he thought, well, okay, I'll go back a different time. So he went back a third time. He got sort of semi-greeted, very similar. He did get his hair washed this time, but he was offered a beer instead of a coffee. And what Michael Gerber says in the E-Myth, even though the haircut was excellent every single time, the fact that they changed his experience means he didn't go back a fourth time. Took his business. So what you're talking about in the Amazon model is, I know I order it, I trust it, consistency. All right, it might be a different person who turns up with a brown box with a smiley face on, but ultimately I know it's there, and if for any reason it goes wrong, I've got full recourse, my money's safe, and I can get it back, and there's accountability there. And that's why you were paying more money when you was getting married on Prime, or maybe Amazon Prime, or whatever it would be. So again, just for the audience, if you've not come across a book called The E-Myth Revisited by Michael E. Gerber, definitely worth a listen. Some great strategies of processing, especially if you're thinking about franchising or process mapping your business, and that would help you with marketing automation anyway, to process map out, to get it right offline before you get it online.
I mean, the thing that really gets me about the customer journey and how Amazon has really nailed it, if you think about it, if I said to you, right, you're going to come to me and you're going to pay me a set amount of money so that I can sell you more things, you'd be like, excuse me, what? No, that's not how this works. That's exactly what Amazon have done. I'm going to charge you X amount of money so that you can get your stuff a little bit faster, and you don't have to pay for the fee of having the thing delivered, but you're going to spend more money. And
they've just lifted the Prime membership.
Exactly.
Is it about 40% something? Is it now 120 or something instead of 70 or something?
And people are still paying
it doesn't blink. But so you think about your business, if you could, can you get away with charging call it what you want, a membership fee to a degree? And put it up 40%, and your customers within the most. I'm sure there's a few people who are just serial complainers and just out of principle they won't do it, but most of us just blink, I just can't afford for it, so I just need that service, so let's get it right.
The big thing about customer experiences is its consistency, and they've been saying for years now, for the last I think it's about 5 years, that it's going to be the differentiator between different companies. It's no longer, and we're seeing this happen already today. I mean, it's happening this year. It wasn't so prevalent last year, but it's very prevalent this year. Good quality experience trumps everything.
It does. Absolutely.
Price is not that much of an issue anymore. All the other little bits, the quality of the actual thing that you get, it's the experience and the quality of the experience that trumps it. And that is what the lifecycle marketing enables you to do. It's to control the experience, make sure that you've got to have a few different things. It's got to be dependable, it's got to be repeatable, it's got to be awesome. And having all those things together means that you have a customer for life. One that is rabid, one that tells all of their friends and family about who you are, that basically does your marketing for you. That's that's what you want to get. And if you're not planning for that, you're missing a massive trick. And you're basically, I hate this phrase, but it's so true, you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah.
But it's true.
But here's another one here. If you look at Citizen M have done Hotel Revolution, now they've rechanged it, and that experience is just phenomenal. And so that doesn't, it's a bit like Expedia, is a similar type of model. You go back, you get the trust value out of there. So multi-touch points for long-term nurture, Kenda. And I know I'd have a different view to you, and maybe another guru or another automated person, or maybe just a consumer has got a different view. But if I'm putting a long-term nurture sequence in place for a client, and whether that's over 12 months, 3 months, 6 months, I suppose it is time dependent, what your sales cycle looks like, all that type of stuff is relevant. But is there any top tips you could give about, how to plan and sort of how many touch points you should have in that before, and would you, and also I suppose the second question to that is, would you just sort of give some value, and then hit them with an offer, or, what's the strategy around that? What's your view on it?
So this is actually stealing a bit of thunder from the book. But we're going to do it anyway. Let's do it. All right. Okay, so effectively, when you're looking at your long-term nurture, there's a couple of things you need to look at. There is a really awesome book called They Ask You Answer by Marcus Sheridan. Dude is a lovely guy. He did my speaker training. He's such a nice guy. But also a great book and really easy to consume. The basic concept is that it's your duty as a business owner to answer the questions that people are asking and help them with their problems. That's what we've been talking about here. And this is, I kind of use this concept to build out a long-term nurture. So in terms of where we are in today's economy and where we are going in terms of our giant internet and the information age that we're no longer sort of tiptoeing into, we're going to have to start swimming in it soon. We've got to make sure that we are answering the questions in a consistent way. And this is how we build our long-term nurture. So we sit down and we go, what is the consumer interested in, and what are the core parts of your business? And so you literally list out, get a spreadsheet out, list out all the different, kind of put them into categories, the core parts of your business. So for instance, ours would be like marketing automation, biopsychology, and then we can go down a little bit further into different areas. And then we overlay that with what the consumer has an interest in. So for our audience, they might be interested in optimization. They might be interested in email marketing. They might be interested in whatever. And what we then do is we go and research all of the questions that they have for all of those core areas and the core areas.
Which is critical, isn't it? Is to get it's a bit like asking your sales team, what's the 10, or your customer service team, what's the 10 questions that you get asked the most? Get them out up front and deal with the objection up front before having to be asked, because you've been transparent about it.
That is exactly it. And so what we're doing is we're identifying what our audience is interested in. We're identifying the questions that they are asking, and we're preempting all of that. We then go and create our content around those questions, and we send that out as the long-term nurture. This does two things. Number one, if you're answering the correct questions, your rankings on Google are going to be awesome. Number two, for your existing database, whether they're customers or prospects, they're like, wow, these guys have thought about everything, and the experience becomes really good.
And that trust goes up again another level, doesn't it?
You're positioning yourself as a real authority. And then with terms, and we'd like to send these out on a weekly basis as well, because that means you get 52 topics in a year. And we keep them going forever, as long as you can keep them going.
Slightly off script here, Kenda. For some of you guys who are listening here, and what Kenda's just said, I just want to back you up 2 or 3 sort of sentences. You send 52 emails a year out in a nurture sequence. So I know you'll have had this question, and I'd be amazed if you didn't. And people say, I cannot email my list every single week. They'll unsubscribe, they'll complain, they'll do this, that, the other. I know that's not true, you know that's not true, but just let's sort of deal with the skeptics out there about why you can't email your list, or should I say, why you can email your list. What's the killer ingredient to being able to be successful at that?
Right, it's got to be value. It has got to be value, and please don't be boring, okay? Like, what we're kind of looking for is infotainment. And now I'm not talking about the infotainment level of Russell Brunson, like what I had for breakfast this morning. No, not that. It is trying to convey your personality, and it's like having a conversation with someone. We go on social media to kind of almost be voyeurs in other people's lives on a daily basis. We spend hours on our phone every day having a look at what other people are doing. We also, when we have a problem, spend hours researching something. So when it comes to emailing stuff, your emails will never be intrusive if you are adding value and you are being personable.
Yeah.
Because it's just continuing that conversation. Now, I have several clients who email on a daily basis.
Wow.
Every single day. And I still cannot touch their engagement levels.
Yeah.
So if I take someone who is scared about emailing, and one of them is a lawyer, I mean, what
Wow.
can you email every day about being a lawyer? It turns out a hell of a lot, right? And their customers are super engaged with it.
Yeah.
It also weeds out all of the people who aren't actually that interested, so it's going to have a continual effect on the engagement.
Because it's list cleanse as well, isn't it?
Exactly.
And it's cleaning the list. And sometimes you just, you may not fall out with somebody. It's just maybe you're not in that space anymore,
Yeah.
or you may have changed an email address or whatever. So getting that engagement is.
I mean, here's the thing as well. How many times do you go into your inbox on a daily basis and get angry because someone has sent you an email? I guarantee you, the emails that you are getting angry with is because someone is selling at you.
Yeah, it's
When someone
pushing
is adding value to your life, what do? You read it and you store the email perhaps away for another day.
Folder or whatever.
And you may not ever look at it again, but it doesn't matter. The positive association is there. Somebody sent me something valuable, right? And that is what we're doing all the time.
And we see that, obviously, when I've been working with Al, with the digital marketer sort of agency sort of side of it, Ryan Dice is a big fan of doing the indoctrination series, and then he'll say on the first email, so what I want you to do now is whitelist my email, set up a folder, do this, do that, do that, and they're educating and training you to sort of say, hey, and oh, by the way, here's how we're going to send them, here's what we're going to get you. So you're conditioning that mind, I suppose, which is back to the psychology. Yeah. So again, if you haven't checked that out, or you've not heard of Ryan Dice, you've probably been in a cave or something for the last thing, or you've just come into the market. But Ryan Dice at digitalmarketer.com, it's well worth taking a look at some of his stuff, and things like the machine and the programs that he runs, and does some great digital training as well. So there's some good value in indoctrination to set expectations of what's coming up there from that side. So a couple of things I just want to touch on this long-term nurture as well. We touched about the multi-touch points, whether it's every day or once a week, once a month, or whatever you want to go, but keep it relevant, and that's great value. We obviously try to look at things like Fibonacci sequences. So if the list is what we call, and what I mean by the list, guys, is the email list, or the SMS list, or whatever it would be, is if it's for getting the least engaged. And we would then sort of say we would email them or message them, but the least they become engaged, the further we would push it out. And I don't know if you've done that before, where you've used the Fibonacci sequence, so you're looking at 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34 as a number and things like that.
It's a nice thing to fall back on.
Yeah, it is. And I'm not saying it works for every industry. Like I say, if you need an e-commerce business with offers coming out, or a voucher, or things like that product, it may be not right, but it's something that we've done. So just to stop some of that hemorrhage on the list, if you haven't quite got your content right, or you haven't quite got the balance or that formula right to get them engaged, just basically what we're saying is, the more you're going to email them, if you haven't got that right, just spread your emails out. So day 1 might be day 1, then day 5, then day 8, then day 13, 21, 34, 55, etc., etc. And try it that way, and then just see if you're holding more people in the list. So if you are getting a high unsubscribe rate, then either look at your content and make sure it's relevant and valuable. But if you think it's relevant and valuable, and you're checking some of the other people out, or you think it's there, just try to spread it out a little bit. It may be just too aggressive for your market, they're not used to it, and that's just something that I want to add to it on the Fibonacci. It doesn't work for everybody, works for others, but it's something that I try and do as a bit of a list saver on some unengaged people. You
can also turn it on its head. So if you're going to transition to sending a lot of content, and you haven't been sending a lot of content, reverse the Fibonacci.
Absolutely.
So start sending, and then send sooner and sooner and sooner, so you're building up the expectation, and be very clear with people and say, we want to be this valuable resource, and just tell them we want to be this valuable resource, so we're going to be increasing the amount of stuff
and also give them the option of what they want to receive.
Exactly. So coming back to, in terms of, do we sell in a long-term nurture? Super important question, right? Do we actually sell, which is what you said. No. 100% categorically no, don't sell in your long-term nurture, because you do your long-term nurture properly and you are focused around increasing the customer experience and blah 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 blah. The long-term nurture becomes the backbone, because it does several different things. You're kind of moving yourself up the rankings with the content that you're creating in terms of Google and SEO. You are increasing the engagement in your list, and here is where the marketing automation really comes to the fore. As people are engaging with your content, they're telling you so much with their behavior, okay? They're telling you they're interested in certain topics. If they're interested in certain topics, then you know that they're interested in certain problems because they are experiencing a pain point. If they're interested in a certain pain point and that relates back to your product, you've then straight away got an opportunity in an automated way, if you set up your systems correctly, to trigger what we call a short-term nurture sequence, which goes, hey, I noticed you clicked 5 times on 5 different topics to do with long-term nurtures. Okay, you're obviously interested in that. Here's a little bit more information and we have a product for you. Okay, so now you're talking...
You use it as a transition into then a short, well, you call it short-term nurture, I'd call it a sales re-engagement or whatever it would be.
So it does that, which is vitally important, because then you start behaviorally selling. You start selling to people who you've never ever spoken to, potentially they've just signed up for stuff. They're telling you what they want through the behavior. It's as powerful as a sales conversation with somebody, because they're telling you exactly what they want. Because very often you get on the phone and you talk to someone, they tell you what they want, but it's not actually what they want.
Absolutely.
With their behavior and what they're engaging with, they're actually telling you that very explicitly.
It's so specific.
It's so specific. So definitely use it, not as a vehicle for selling, but as a vehicle for telling you what people are interested in, and then you can sell.
Which is, you're getting that buyer profile, that better demographic, and then you can best position to go forward. And then at a point, and what I've found with a well-executed long-term nurture sequence is, a lot of people will come and say, hey, can you tell us more about that? And then
they'll reply back to the emails.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is great. It's great for everything. And so you kind of start using this long-term nurture as the backbone for your engagement. It tells you a second thing, that if the engagement drops off, you've got a problem.
Absolutely.
And so now you can start re-engagement campaigns. It tells you that certain topics are more interesting than others, so it informs what projects and products you go and invest in. It gives you so much, but if you keep the selling out of it, it creates an environment that somebody always wants to open those emails. It's never going to be sold to. It's always value add, but it also means that you can leave your customers in there. So people who have already purchased the product aren't going to feel like you've
had a deal or a discount or a repeat purchase.
Exactly. So it kind of covers so many different bases, and a long-term nurture is one of the most powerful tools that you have.
I hope you're not going to disagree with me here.
What, go on then.
But when
fisticuffs.
When we build what we call a growth engine here at Successor, the first thing that we do is do the long-term nurture.
Oh my God, yes.
So we do that first, that's the baseline, and then we say, hey, once we've done that, we've got the fallback, we've got the best of all with the indoctrination, but the long-term nurture. So I see it so often, and whether it's in HubSpot, in the workflows, in Infusionsoft, in the campaign builders, where people say, right, I'm going to put a lead magnet funnel up or a webinar funnel, and that's okay, and I'm not saying that, we don't want lead gen, but what if you don't strike them out straight away, which is a big chance you won't do? So where are you going to park them? When you drive in your car on the road, you come home and you either go to work or you come home and you either park the car. So where are you going to park them, and where are you going to educate them, and where are you going to bring them back next time? So I just wanted to be clear. I've had some people say to me before, oh, why do you do that? Or is that the right strategy?
100%.
I need lead gen. No, I said you need a long-term nurture first, then we'll build on that. So that's a really important thing for the listeners.
It's like dating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's say you meet a lovely new lady or man or frog, whatever you like, and you meet this new entity, and you take them out on a date and you have a really great time, and then you ignore them until the next day. Obviously, they're not going to be very impressed with you, and they're going to be really annoyed with you. That's all the long-term nurture is. It is there to keep the engagement up and running, but also it's filling that kind of coming back to system 1 and system 2. It's creating that positive rule set, so they look forward to hearing from you, and that you're always getting filtered to the top of stuff. It's super important.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for the tips on the long-term nurture. I'm sure you've had a ton of value out of that. And again, if there's any questions that you want to ask on that, where you're at, what you should be doing, what you're not doing, is what you're doing correct or not, you can always just shoot us a message using the hashtag #TheOpenMic, and we'll get those answered for you. So just as we're sort of coming up to the latter part of the podcast, and I've really enjoyed it, some real value and diamonds in here, Kenda. Thanks for sharing. I suppose we couldn't sort of leave it without touching on a couple of things we've talked about, which is customer engagement and customer engagement strategies. And I'd really sort of like you to share with your experience about the best way to get customer engagement experience. You've touched on it. I know you've touched on it a couple of times, but if we could just sort of segment this part of, the latter part of the show. Why is customer engagement experience so important? Let's just recap on that. That permission-based approach as well, you cover that in there. But also great, relevant, engaging content, and all the other things that you might want to add into that. But there's the side of things, because ultimately, keeping customers engaged if you can keep them engaged, keep them interested, you become more valuable to them, all that type of stuff. I just want your view on that, because I think that you've had so much value today. I'd just like to sort of get a different view and sort of validate our ideas on that as well, and the audience gets it, in stereo as opposed to in mono, if that makes sense.
So I mean, the interesting thing about us modifying the lifecycle marketing journey and making engagement its own standalone thing is we want to be able to say to people, this is the crux of what you do. If you don't have engagement, you have nothing.
Yeah.
All right. If you don't have engagement, you've got no basis to sell. You don't have the right to sell to them. Quite frankly, you've got no permission to sell to them. You have no space in their kind of mental capacity. So engagement is everything. It's why we build long-term nurture sequences. It's why kind of email marketing campaigns aren't just one email. There are several emails to engage people on different levels.
Yeah.
Engagement is everything in today's world. It's why experience is so important, because they've got to be engaged with that experience. You've got to be able to build a relationship with that, and you cannot do that without engagement.
Yeah, I see. I always see, when people say, I've got X thousand followers or X thousand on my list. Well, it doesn't really matter. It's how many's engaged and open it and committed. We were talking about Instagram before, and it was one of the channels that's really, doing
super
the business.
engaged,
It's doing the business for us. We get more engagement on Instagram than we do on any other channel, and we pump a lot of content out. And
this is one of the things that I think. I know everyone hates GDPR, but actually GDPR has been kind of a blessing in disguise.
Exactly.
I really feel it has, because it's making a lot of businesses sit up and go, do you know what, actually I'm not treating my audience very well. And that's all that GDPR was, is it's kind of people lashing back out at marketers and businesses for spamming them.
Absolutely.
And as a housekeeping item, you should be looking at your list every at least every quarter, at least every 3 months, having a look at your list and going, how many people are engaged? What is this unengaged subsection? Can we do anything to get them back on board? And if you can't, get rid of them. They're this kind of vanity metric that we have around email lists is not only like quite yucky. Like when someone says to me, I have a list of 200,000, I'm like, yeah. So
what was your last open rate?
Yeah, exactly. I would any day have like a 60, 70% open rate over a 10% open rate on a giant list. I want the really rapidly.
Well, the other thing is it's hurting your domain authority.
Exactly.
Anyway. So
there's logical reasons it's bad as well as sensible ones.
I won't name a customer that we have just out of professional courtesy. But they wanted to put all the data in and just get them in. I've met these at network. It's not engaged. Let's get them through a specific. Let's subsector them. Let's tease them. Put them in and broadcast. Of course, they get spammed. They get held back. Yeah. They get out of its domain, and then she's wondering why. Majority of her emails have then got a spam box, and I know people say, well, there's many reasons it goes to spam box: domain authority,
but it's engagement.
But it is an engagement as well, so it does contribute. So if you sat out there listening to this podcast or watching this on the channels, and you sat there, saying, look how big's my list. I generally don't care. Like I say, I'd take a tenth of that list if it was engaged more than the biggest list is.
Do you want some tips?
Yeah, absolutely.
On increasing engagement, right? Okay, so first and foremost, when it comes to email, we've touched on domain authority and that kind of stuff. It's really important because all Google can track, if it's Gmail, whatever your email service provider is, all it's tracking is engagement, and that is what determines whether or not you get into the spam. Yes, there's other little things.
There is.
Pictures don't matter. Stop hanging about the pictures. There's much more important things. Get people to reply back. So an open is considered an engagement. A click on a link is a lot heavier of a weighting of engagement, but the most powerful one is a response. So asking people to reply, don't do it all the time because it'll become white noise, but every now and then ask people to reply back with their kind of stuff. So Chris Brogan is another marketer. He's phenomenal. I love him to bits. And he does this so well. Yeah. He'll say I'm drinking such and such, just reply back and let me know what you're drinking.
Yeah.
And what happens is
people get engaged.
Exactly. He's got a huge amount of engagement because he's opening the conversation loop all the time. So that is my top tip, is to kind of get people to reply, but invite them in. You can do that on social media. You can do that on whatever. Post behind the scene pictures of what you're doing. Be personable and be real, and invite them into the business so that they're part of it. And you'll start getting that engagement.
That's absolutely bang right, and you know, we touched on the indoctrination email earlier. If you think about what that framework is, and if you're ever sat at home and you've had an email of somebody after you opted in that says, hey, thanks for being part of my community, my name is X and here's a little story about me and here's what I want you to do. First I want you to follow me on Facebook. Guess what, that's a link click. You've obviously opened it, and it's probably got something like not a curious based headline, but it's somebody's how to get started. So it's like, oh, how to get started at what? Oh, I better go and have a look at that. So it's inducing the open. Then you get in a click by follow me on social, and then there's usually a question in the PS at the bottom, which is, hey, I'm going to share with you something tomorrow, but hey, I want you to have a think about this. So you're preempting it, and then the question comes in, and then it asking for the reply. So that's how Ryan Dice and the digital marketer team, I'm not saying they invented the indoctrination, but that's where I sort of bossed it, I suppose, and really understood it in the best area.
You can ninja that, so you can add a level onto that. And I think one of our most underutilized resources is the thank you page.
Absolutely.
If you think about the fact that your average open rates for the first email straight after someone's opted in, they've asked for something for free invariably, and then only about 50% of the people open it. And so immediately you lose 50% of your opt-ins interest, unless you are very clever about the fact that 100% of the people who sign up will go to the thank you page.
Correct.
So put something on the thank you page that prepares them for it, and be like a little video. So what we're implementing on our thank you pages, and we're experimenting with this because we can, we've got a little video that I just say, thank you so much for opting in, blah, blah, blah. Here are some links that are relevant to the stuff. And by the way, you're about to get an email. Make sure that you check that email out because it's got something special. So immediately you pique the curiosity. You also give them other things and send them to the rest of the resources. So they're feeling like they've just got something extra, like, oh, you know, such and such told me to go and do that. And you're prepping them, and we're seeing around it's about 80 to 90% of the people open that first email. So our open rate was quite high before. It was around 60 to 70, but now we're really.
So these are the marginal gains that you're making by experimentation. So that's a great tip. Again, I keep going back to this indoctrination because I'm thinking of the copy.
So important,
And one thing that Ryan Dice actually says is, so you know, the next few weeks are going to feel like Christmas. And he actually says that because he's talking, I'm going to send you this, I'm going to do this, and again, he's
preparing you.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the same, but in a different format. You're using a thank you page video. He's using that in an indoctrination series.
I think he should do a thank you page video too. Steal that, Ryan Dice. Steal it.
Absolutely. So we're going to wrap on the show now. Kenda, thanks ever so much for adding, well, more than, I've put in my show notes here, serious value. I think it's extra serious value. I certainly appreciate not only the big distance, you know, I know you get a few 100-mile round trip to come and see us today, and that's serious commitment. So I know the production team have sort of been enthralled today. Excuse me, and
are you crying?
I'm crying. Yeah, not at all. But I know the production team. I take occasional glances over to them, and sometimes they're on the phones, and sometimes that they're messing about with what the script looks like and things like that. But I think you two guys have been fairly enthralled with what Kenda's brought to the table today. Would you agree on that?
Definitely.
Absolutely. So thanks ever so much, serious value, Kenda. We appreciate the time. So as we start to wrap up on the episode 13 about automated marketing linked into the biopsychology, we've talked about so much. I'm not, normally I've done 25-minute podcasts. I don't know what this is running at, probably about an hour and 15 or something. So what I want to do is try and condense this, and I know we've talked about so much, so I'm going to try and ask you to pick out your top 3 tips for people and the listeners about automated marketing, about biopsychology. What could they actually do? What would be the top 3 things you'd ask them to concentrate on to take back to the businesses so they could implement it and get some more value and get the results from your experience?
Okay, easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? Okay, so first and foremost, tip number 1 is attention.
Yeah.
Like 100%. Pay attention to how your audience is paying attention.
Yeah.
Like be very specific about what they're looking for and what they're interested in, and then think about how you relate to that. How do you fit into that? Are you talking about yourself? Blah, 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 right? All the things we spoke about with regards to system 1 and 2, pay attention to how they are paying attention. Google Micro Moments is a great thing for that, by the way. Tip number 2, make sure that you have some form of lifecycle marketing strategy, right? The buyer journey. And if you
just repeat again that is the attract,
engage, sell, and wow.
You got it.
Right? So make sure that you've got something to do with that planned out for your business. And if you are looking at marketing automation, it's a great place to start because it will help you figure out where you've got the biggest gaps, and that might help you choose the right system and choose the right consultant. Okay, so make sure you've got the lifecycle marketing strategy in place or a buyer journey in place is tip number 2. And tip number 3 is, of course, all about engagement. So make sure that you're keeping your audience, your customers, your prospects super engaged, and that's going to give you the golden egg, effectively, which is customer lifetime value.
Which brings it forward. So with multiple repeat purchases into the WOW referral and you know, being able to move them from strangers who hit your website through to advocates who are actually not, and let's just be clear about an advocate. This is not somebody who's saying, oh yeah, maybe just give them a call. That's people who are proactively going out there saying, if you're in this space or you've got this problem, go and speak to Kenda or go and speak to whoever it would be.
They hear a problem and they go, do you know what, before you do anything else, go talk to Success Hub, you know,
or whatever it would be.
Don't touch anything else, just go straight there. Those are your advocates.
You've got it, absolutely. So Kenda, thanks again. I know you guys will be keen to sort of find out more about Kenda and the team. So if you search Automation Ninjas online, or you can visit automationninjas.com. Don't forget, if you want to get a free copy of Kenda's soon-to-be published book, Hack the Buyer Brain, that would be automationninjas.com/golden ticket. Or we can get you on Facebook as well.
Facebook.
Facebook.com/automation ninjas.
YouTube
and see some channels there as well. So there's you can get as much of this as you want. And again, if you want to shoot us a message, use the hashtag #TheOpenMic, and we'll either forward your question to Kenda or we'll get you connected with Kenda if you want us to make that introduction. So if you want to shoot us any questions, you've got that option to do that. Thanks for listening. We hope you've had a great deal of value. And as always, if you want to get in the game, go do the hustle, go make it happen, and we're going to catch up with you in next week's show. Thanks again, Kenda.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye now.
You have been listening to The Open Mic, brought to you by the Success Hub. To find out more and to get the resources we have mentioned in this podcast episode, simply visit blog.thesuccesshub.io and view the podcast section. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to catching up with you in our next episode. This podcast and associated materials is published under copyright to The Success Hub. All rights reserved. No reproduction of this material is permitted.